L,
I'm Caramel.
what's going on, best friend?
You know what? It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. How about that? How
That,
about
that,
you? What's going on
that's
with you?
corny. That's corny. It's a
I
beautiful day.
can be
You're
corny if I
stealing
want
somebody
to.
else's line. That you're stealing.
I don't think Mr. Rogers would mind.
No, because he was such a sweet person.
He was. He was a good guy.
Let me tell you, before we go down that rabbit hole, that seems to be happening lately. I mean, it's just like you start a project. I don't know about you, but I'll start something and then all of a sudden here I go down this hole and I'm off into a whole nother project and I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, that's not where I started. What the heck is going on?
Listen, I'm going to tell you right now what ends up happening when you are the CEO, the business owner, and you're having to do one task and something is predicated on that task, like a prerequisite. All of a sudden, like my example is this. The other day, I need to I'm sending out to all of my past travelers, all of my clients, a little thank you package that just gives them a little bag that says WTA and a little postcard that says, thank you so much for being a customer. And I needed to find the list of all of my past travelers. Now, you would think that my system would have that, but I've changed systems since the beginning of WTA 3 times. So some customers were in the original website, some customers were in the first CRM, customer relationship manager, and now they're in this one. And so I was like, oh shucks, I gotta find the list. And so that sent me to that place and that place. I remember I used another email and another. And before I knew it, it was 2 hours. I was like, wait a minute. I just need to start this thing and just get this together. You know what I mean?
Well, and for me, this is what will happen.
Hmm.
So I sat down and I was getting ready. I'm planning a conference that'll take place in Dallas. And
Yep.
so for agents and insurance agents. And
Yep.
so I sat down and I was like, okay, I'm going to send an email out to the agents that attended last year, the
Hmm.
inaugural event agents that attended. I'm going to have a discount for them.
Yep.
So then I said, okay, well, I need to form a list of all the people that are in the Facebook group that prompted the idea to do
Yep.
this. Okay, so then I got somebody to compile a list. And so then I get to the list, but the way they put the list together, it's not separated. So then I started going down trying to separate it and do all this. So then somehow I ended up looking in the account and looking at the sponsors. And then I'm like, okay, I got all these sponsors. And so now I need to send out emails to sponsors. Then somebody emailed me that was a sponsor that was introducing me to another sponsor. And I'm just like, I'm so far away. Never have I sent out the email that I originally was intended. Then I was going to go to Chat GPT to do the email
Yeah.
specifically. Then I couldn't log into it. And so then somehow the phone rang and then I started looking at something else. Now I'm trying to figure out what money is coming in my account from the insurance company. And I'm like, this is so, and I end up spending the whole day not accomplishing anything. So
Sure.
what I'm learning is that I used to be really good about time management,
Hmm.
but now that I am what I've learned now, I'm taking some courses and doing some different things. And we're talking about leading versus managing.
Sure.
And what's happening when I have to manage day to day activities, that's when I find myself most off task. What about you?
So I'll say this. I think that we are managing what is the difference between day one starting in the business and what's happened 5 years and what's happening now as we're moving and transitioning into past that time. And I think for me, what I'm recognizing is, to your point, these little small tedious tasks end up getting in the way of what I'm trying to get big picture. And I think that, I was reading this article on LinkedIn and it's from, I think it's called Strategies. And they say that you, as the CEO and the professional, it's important for you to know your goals and avoid distractions. And so what we're seeing is those distractions that are coming in, creeping
It,
into not the big picture.
and I think also
Mhm.
now my day to day looks different because, okay, so I started like this example this day. I started with, okay, I had coffee with somebody that I needed to connect that was new to the
Yep.
community. So by me being the chair of the chamber, I wanted to connect with that person. So I had coffee with them. Then I went to one of my other office. And so I'm not in I have an office as in one city and I had to go to another city. So I drove to that city. Then
Right.
we had some plans of recording CEO Chronicles. Then I got to drive back to the first city because I got something to do with chamber this
Yep.
evening. So those are the big things that are on my calendar that I got to accomplish. So now while I'm sitting at the office, I'm looking at the day-to-day production. So I'm on them about, hey, I need this, I need that, I need this, I
Right.
need that. So it's just a lot of moving parts. And so if I don't structure my day, I had to sit down yesterday and put everything on my calendar, all the big things on my calendar to make sure that I hit those parts and then backfill the day. And I'm like,
Well, so
Okay,
that's
okay.
to me, there's a delegation thing, right? So you and I have talked many, many months about what it looks like to delegate some of that thing. And for someone who likes to control all the things, right?
I've gotten a whole lot better. I
You
will
have,
admit that
you're right, you have.
I've gotten a lot better because um I realize now I can't do
You
everything.
can't. So that's the point. So rabbit hole, in to me, in terms of what rabbit hole actually means, it's not delegating some of the things that you really don't need to spend time on because you're so wrapped up in wanting that
But
small tedious
I
thing.
will say this though, I was
Mhm,
doing a lesson yesterday, and in one part of the lesson went into what do you delegate. And so they did an experiment, and they said, okay, you
mhm,
take your day, and I want you to go and list your whole day out, and
mhm.
then go in and color code the things that are money making, that are
Uh-huh.
to help you make the
Right,
money,
right,
and then things that are not, those are green things, and then red things are the things that are not money maker but are essential that you do, like
right.
paying bills and all that kind of stuff. And then they said go in and fill in your day with the stuff that you need to do, that you have to
100%.
do, and see how it balances out. And I thought that was an interesting thing, because there are a lot of things that are on my calendar that are not direct money makers but can lead to money making.
So I'll say this. I'm gonna say that recently, I say over the last 7, 8 months, I've really been able to get be in tune with what those tasks that are necessary that can be delegated and not. So for example, my team, um, they they get caught up in some of the details that I can make a split decision on because of my expertise and how long I've been doing it. My example is putting together a trip. It's hard for me to tell them, hey, go look in Japan and get me 3 hotels. They don't, there's 3,000 hotels in Japan. So for them to narrow down that list is an issue. So what have I done? I've taken that away from them. I'll go in when we're doing a new trip and I'll list out, here's day 1, 2, all the way to 7. I put in parentheses with the link to the hotel that I have chosen, 3 of them, and say, all right, go do your part and contact those 3 hotels, contact these 3 tour operators, contact this person, and let's go ahead and fill in the gap. That has revolutionized the way that I've been able to work, which freed up a whole lot of my time. So to your point, that doesn't directly feel like or seem like it's revenue producing, but once they get those details and we know what that budget is, we knock that trip out. Michelle, you're talking about selling out a trip before it ever even gets announced to the public, right? I'm just
Yeah, so that is. And so
but the
what?
rabbit, but the last point I want to make is the rabbit hole for me had been that up to that point. Before I had a team, I would get caught up in all of those details. And now to have a well oiled money making machine is what I consider it to be. It required me to kind of dissect out what was the barrier for me having my day being bogged down and having to deal with all of this stuff. And my husband saying, you touch stuff too much. Why are you having to touch that 2, 3, 4, 5 times? Well, that was the reason why I had not compartmentalized like you said with those folks with the green, red, and filling in the gap.
And that makes sense to me. And I'm going to be honest with you. It's like I will get bogged down in some details, and my mind will start. So I've learned to tell myself,
Mhm.
focus.
Yep.
I'll say, hey, focus.
Uh,
And then
the first thing they say is stay focused on the goal. It's easy to get distracted. It's easy to find opportunities to do something that you really are trying to get after and something that's different, but to stay on that focused goal.
and to do what's easy. That's what you'll find yourself doing the thing that's easy for you to
Mhm,
do.
mhm.
That's the thing that you'll your mind will go to, like,
Sure.
oh, this is the fun thing, this is the easy thing. The hard thing is having to stay on top, having to look at, having to do, having to go, and that's the hard part. And I'm like,
Well,
ugh.
conducting a thorough analysis of what it actually is. When you deconstruct your day and deconstruct what is really important, you got to do a thorough analysis of that. I mean, I know for me, I had to make sure that, okay, what is it that I'm trying to get out here? What are they going to help me do? Well, when I can give them a short list and they can go do it, and now they can come and be great. Now I can go ahead and go on to the next trip. Right now, we've been going back and forth about this one trip to Ireland. We can't find a daggone guide. Why can't we find a guide? Well, I said, okay, because I was able to give them the task and they weren't able to do it. I'm like, well, wait a minute now. Y'all have the outline. What's the barrier? Oh, you know what? We need to do this ourselves. So I took it back and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And they're like, oh, that makes sense. Now, by the end of the week, we'll have that trip out and up, right? But that thorough analysis is what helps you understand and be able to take back and say, okay, this is something that you can do. This is something that I can do or need to do.
and and also I have to make myself focus and settle down. And then sometimes I'll be frazzled
Mhm.
and I really am not focused like I should be. It's because my mind is somewhere else and I have to take the time to plan out my day. So waking up, I do my exercise, I do my walk, and I need to think through what I got to do. Me
Mhm.
sitting down the other day and really putting everything on my calendar, looking at my day, what I have to do, got me organized, got me focused. And then making a list. It doesn't hurt to make a list of the things that you need to get accomplished. And I remember the principles of making a list. They say go through the list, label everything A, B, C, or D.
Mhm.
A and B's you get done, C and D's you throw away. C and D's, that if it's a C or D, that means you don't really need to be doing it. Get it
Mhm.
off the list and do the A's and B's. And that in itself helps
And you
you.
can get off a kilter. Some people don't realize that when you have a process that you've been working with, and then you get comfortable with it, and you stop doing the actual process because you can kind of skip it. Like, oh, I don't have to do the list right now because I know in my head what I got going on. That will work probably for a little while, and then you'll start to realize that why do I feel so tired? Why am I feeling frazzled? Why? Well, it's because you walked away from the process that was
That's why
working.
you have to have a manager to manage your process, because what
Mm,
ends up happening, if everybody could stay on task on their own, you wouldn't need managers. And that's what a manager does. They solve problems, they control a situation, and they give direction of what you
sure.
need to do. And I think that's so important. And by you being a CEO, sometimes you don't have anybody that's managing your time. You have to manage yourself. And that's the hardest person to manage, because I am a high performer, a high achiever. And so
Mhm.
even with my slacking, I'm doing more than the average person is doing.
Sure.
But
100%.
am I being the best that I can be? And so sometimes I have to check myself and say, hey, you're not performing at the top level that
Here's
you
the
can
other part
perform.
of that, seeking expert advice, and I think that people think seeking expert advice means going to find a coach or going to find somebody to, or it really can also mean finding a platform. You're going through an actual SBA program, right?
Hmm.
And in that program, you're seeking advice on how to become more effective and more diligent and be a proper leader. Would you agree with that?
Yes. And so the biggest thing, I do several things. And so I give you a perfect example.
Mhm.
Last month we were having a really, really bad month. I'm
Sure.
talking like it was like horrible. And
Right.
so what I did is I went back to basics and I called other agents and I said, hey, what are you doing? I had a
Mhm.
call with a bunch of agents and I had an agent that's really performing well, share his tips of what he's doing. And
Mhm.
it rekindled in my mind the basics that you have to do. And I went back and I implemented the basic things that I know to do that I had just kind of gotten away from. And that got us back on track and we pulled the month out. And that was
Sure.
really a big deal. And so that's one thing I do is I go and I talk to people who are in the industry that can help me. Now, this program that I'm involved in, SBA Thrive, is an opportunity to be with other CEOs in
Yeah.
different fields to talk to them about. They have these modules that we have to take that go into
Mhm.
some details and some different, all a part of leadership. That's a part of you never stop learning. As a
Absolutely.
CEO, I don't know everything. Like I have really hit a wall. These 5 years, I have hit a wall. I finished my first growth plan
Yeah.
and now I had problems writing the second growth plan. And this program is supposed to help me write
Sure.
that next growth plan. And I really need that because I didn't even know where, like, okay, what do I want to do? I want to buy another book. Do I want to buy a
Yeah.
building? What do I need to be doing? Do I want to stay in insurance? Do I want to start another business? I always talk about having 5 streams of income. And so it's
Right.
like, okay, how do I go about doing that? And I've gotten kind of gun shy in terms of, so that's a rabbit hole where I used to be very
You were
direct and
focused
focused
and you
on what,
knew exactly what the next thing was gonna be. Boop, boop, boop. Well,
and
I'll tell
now,
you this. Yeah, so,
and go ahead. Now
no,
I'm just kind of like, I feel myself kind of like I'm in this limbo zone of what do I really want? And so that's what I'm having to hone in on. And that's why I feel like I'm in this rabbit hole because I'm having to hone in. What do I want now? What do we've remodeled the house. I'm comfortable when I go home. I'm pleased with that situation. You know, I'm just kind of at this plateau. So what's the next level of thing that I do?
and I think that that could be that's some of that rabbit hole. I think that when you are not as clear as you once were, like we laser focused in that first 5 years and building the business, what it was going to look like, how you felt it was going to be, and it giving you all of those feelings, and now you're like, okay, so we here now. What, like, when you, to your point, like, okay, it pays some of this, it pays for our travel, it does this thing. Okay, so what else? McCoy has, my husband, he's asked me quite often, and it's been a question that I've had to really, really think about and process. Well, why are you doing this? Why do you need more? What is this more for? One of the questions, and so when he first asked it, it was kind of like, well, what do you mean why? Like, I'm doing the thing, like, this is because I'm a right. And then I started thinking, well, wait a minute, that's a proper question to ask 5 years in. Well, why are you doing the thing that you're doing, and when will enough be enough?
And that's where the rabbit hole comes in.
Yeah,
Looking for your tribe, looking for, like, we have each other, and so
sure,
that takes us. That's the basics right there of every day somebody to
right,
talk to and sound off. Okay, now I need another layer of people that
yes,
are injecting ideas into me, saying, "Hey, what about this? What about that?" Rekindling my excitement about, "Hey, why don't I do this?" Okay, or, "Hey, go into something different," or
well,
just
self-development was a thing for us, right? So, I've always had a barrier to hiring a professional coach or somebody professional or buying a program. But now I recognize that personal development, it's a necessary tool in order to get to the next level,
I'm
whatever
a
the next
hundred
level is.
percent. I'm 100% into betterment. I'm always reading books. I'm
Well,
always looking to
I
have a.
was reading the books and I was thinking, following the people, but to actually be in a room with other people who are like-minded, I didn't know how valuable it was until, remember, I went a couple months ago, I went to Bali and was like with some other chicks who were like banging, doing some things too. And I was like, wait a minute, this is what it feels like to be
Well, when you
surrounded.
get with the people to where you no longer feel like your thought process is like, you can say something and everybody in the room automatically understands, and they're like, "Yeah,
Yes,
exactly." That feels good. Building a community of people that you don't stand out, and your thought process is not so alien or foreign to them. That
sure,
is that
sure.
is huge. That's huge, because a lot of times I find, I'll say and think things and other people just do not understand.
They do
And
not, they cannot, there's no frame of reference for it. And when you say it, it sounds very foreign.
and that'll send you down a rabbit hole,
It
when you
will.
always have to you always have to adjust what you're thinking. You always have to, when people ask you, when is enough enough? Well, what do you mean? I mean,
Right.
am I asking for too much? Am I thinking too big?
Right. Is this too
Five
big?
streams
Am
of
I not? Am I
What's wrong
supposed
with
to
five
be?
streams of income? There are people that get 10, 20 streams. I'm just asking for five. I feel like billionaires have all kinds of streams of income,
Well, I just think that, not it, but it begs the question. You do need to ask yourself, well, why? What is it that you're getting after? And so when he asked the question, like I said, now I'm starting to really be able to articulate and be able to say it out loud, because I had to really come to that realization in this time. Over the last 7 months, 8 months, it's been a big deal for me understanding my numbers and getting to after the projections that I needed to get to make sure that the business doesn't stay in the hole. I can be very honest with growth of any business. Typically, there is some growing. There's growing pains, and you end up being in a hole, especially if you have not elevated the sales and made those price adjustments in order to meet those new objectives. You told me from the
And
very
there's so
beginning.
many things that impact your business,
Sure,
and that'll send you down a rabbit hole. It's like, they're like, okay, post pandemic, all of the barriers,
sure,
it's like every day something is impacting you, something is hitting you, and
yeah.
you're just like. And so what I had to do is step back, and I think that's another reason why I get caught and pulled in so many directions, because every day I never know what's going to be
What's
the
going to be the
impact.
new change?
like like
Mhm.
the people I work with, how they change, what's impacting them, then it's
Yeah.
so many variables now that you used to could, this is how it's going to be. They
And
have
then the other
changed.
part is, with every level, I think, what's the saying? With every level, there's a new devil. Like, Puffy says it best. More money, more problems. Right? Like, the more you're doing, the more involved you are. The bigger it gets. The more you have to figure. Oh, what about this? And what about that? And what about this? And so I now feel very comfortable in a space where I am now, financially being able to come out of the hole, because I was in a really big hole at the time. Now I feel comfortable about that. So now that money is not the issue, well, what is the issue? Well, the issue is, how do I make sure that in the future, if I want this to be a thing that provides me, what it's been providing me, like a decent little salary, a decent way of life, well, how can I make it to where it can stay that way, or it can grow to where I can come out of being the face and the running of the day-to-day activity? And the only way to do that is collaborate with team. So that's kind of where this rabbit hole for me is right now. Like, okay, so I'm collaborating with team. How do I make sure that I build them up to be as successful as possible, where I can step a little bit of the behind role, where I am looking at big picture?
And that is hard. That is
It
hard.
is.
People are so different now
Yes,
in their
they are.
mindset and the things that motivate them, and it's very different. And so you have to spend a lot of time developing and things that motivate people, and it's just very different.
Well, a team to team building activities now, people staying for the long haul, that doesn't happen often. Very, very rarely do you have someone who's staying somewhere 10, 15, 20 years. You are dealing with people who you might have a year. Okay. And so I've been thinking, I talked to you about that this morning, where we were talking about, earlier, about how I can develop a team where they will be comfortable with the hourly and not just being a project based. And if they will stick with a WTA for a little while, all of that matters in what I'm thinking about right now. So, here we
I
are.
and you're right that it matters. I just feel like it's a lot going on, and I get so bogged down in my mind, and so I have to, like I said, make that list. I have to make that list, and it's just it's a lot, and I feel like sometimes the more I have to do, the more
The less time you have.
or the more paralyzed I get.
Ah,
You know what I'm saying? It's just a lot. It's just a lot for me. And I just feel like, how do I solve this problem? How do I solve this issue? How do I make this thing work? And it's a lot. And I think that it takes time you gotta have to take the time to make the list, and you got to physically put it on the paper or put it in your phone or wherever. You got to do that.
well, what has happened is, like this month, of the month of July, we have taken WTA is not on any active trips. That's a big deal, right? And that was the same way last year. So with last year, when July happened and there was no trips, it was kind of like, well, what the heck? What do we do? This year, I understood it, and I was able to say, okay, well, we're going to use this time to be more efficient, to get rid of all the old old stuff, get things, make everything new, make it more efficient. Get rid of erroneous information, be able to find things a lot quicker, all of that bad information, and being able. So then when we get out of the month of July, WTA will be better forward because our processes look a little bit more streamlined and a lot less cluttered, because
Hmm.
rabbit holes are clutter. That's what they are, in my opinion.
And and clutter is hard. It's that clutter is sometimes you just feel foggy,
Yeah.
and you feel like, hey, I can't make this happen, and then you don't have people helping you or assisting you. They seem like they're stagnant, and when you're the CEO, you're responsible for everything. You feel like you have to make the car go, and it's just like, you
Well, so
know
I'll tell you this. Some of those strategies are just what we just were talking about, right? Keeping an eye on the big picture, collaborating with your team, finding somebody who is an expert to give you some of that advice that you need, making sure you do a thorough analysis, write the list down, get all that down, and really at the end of the day, ultimately staying focused on your goals. I think that that's all we have to worry about. So we can get out of that rabbit hole. You?
I agree. I think that that is the seeking the help, understand at first, admitting that you are
Yeah,
in the rabbit hole, because sometimes you can feel like you're getting things accomplished, and you're really not. And that's what I'm having to work with my team and let them understand, is that you're thinking you're doing a lot, but you're not really doing anything. You're not really accomplishing what you think you're accomplishing. And I just feel like, I'm having to push, and I'm sometimes you feel like you're pushing by yourself, and you're dragging people, and I need more people helping me push, because the car is heavy. We're having to push the car, and the car can be heavy, and I need more people that can help me push the car and not lean, because some people can look like they're helping you push and they're leaning against it, and that can send you down the rabbit hole. And 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 that's something that I feel that's important, that when
yeah,
do I get these people off the bus. And I think it's an analogy of the bus, having the right people on the bus, and then having those people on the bus in the right seats
sure.
in order for them to help you. And I
And
think
thrive. Yeah,
when you're spinning out of control and you feel like you're in a rabbit hole, something is amiss in your program. And you're going to have to go back to the basics and start evaluating everybody. Why do I feel like I have to keep stopping and jumping and doing? Am I tired? Do I
sure.
need to take a vacation? Do I need to reorganize my organization and my
Hmm.
team? Do I need to start meeting with people? Do I need to look at my processes? Something is off. The reason
Yep.
why because usually you're efficient, then all of a sudden you can't seem to
You know that
accomplish.
something has changed and you're seeing having a little bit more of a buildup of anxiety. You're feeling a little bit distracted and off kilter. That typically means that there's something awry, just like you just said, and you've got to figure out what that is so you can stay out of that rabbit hole.
And I think too, that's another thing that they talked about, is health
Hmm.
and wellness. As a CEO, you have got, because your mind can be foggy because you're
Sure.
tired. You're not, and you know how I am. I don't get a lot of sleep.
Hmm.
And I think that is something that also I have to start focusing on now. I have got to start getting the proper rest. 7 to 8 hours. They say you have to have that.
Yeah.
And I'm on 4 to 5 hours. And I didn't realize it until I started monitoring my Fitbit. I think that causes some of my fogginess. So I'm going to have to start taking that time to get the rest that I need
Yep.
so that my mind can be clear. I'm exercising, I'm eating like I should. So now I need to do that list. I need to consult with my people,
Yep.
my agents and other people to help me get a plan together. And I need to come in with what do I want to accomplish? What are my A's and B's that I'm going to accomplish today? And I think that will help me come out of this rabbit hole because
100%.
you feel like you are just making it and you're just, you know, you spinning tops, but ain't nothing getting accomplished.
Mhm.
And that is something that you can't continue to do that because that's how it's almost like an ostrich with your head in the sand. You're
Yep.
feeling like you're doing a lot, but you're not accomplishing
And then
anything.
at the end of the day, you can't continue that at that rate because that's when things start to fall off and start to fall down. And then it's hard to come back when you got too far gone. So,
And you can start feeling like I don't want to do this business. I don't want to do this. I'm not happy. I'm all because you haven't taken control and
yep.
you haven't gotten yourself organized and you haven't managed yourself. And that's as a CEO, you don't have a boss over you. You have got to start managing yourself, managing your time and holding yourself accountable. Nobody else can hold you accountable. I read this book 12-week year and in that he makes that point. Nobody else can hold you accountable.
Nope.
You can hold yourself accountable. And I was like, what? Because people like I got an accountability partner.
So
Really,
I would tell you at the end of the day, follow if you know there's a rabbit hole happening, follow these steps that we have, navigating through collaborating with team and all of that. And when you do that part, you'll go ahead and you'll have a better time at moving forward. So I can't wait to see us get out of these rabbit holes, best friend.
I got one foot out.
Love you,
I got
girl.
a lucky rabbit's foot. Okay.